Hi, everybody. We're live tonight. One Fun Guy podcast is in the studio with my guest Lilia. She was on a few months ago, and we kind of had a great conversation about music, and we kind of were going to touch about mental health. And so I'm having her back on tonight. So, Lilia, introduce yourself, and we'll get the conversation started.
Hey everyone, I'm Lilia Bogova, the Inner Demon Crusher. That is my brand because I'm an artistic mental health advocate. So, what I do is show people how to improve their mental well being through creative arts. So, that's music, dance, comic, storytelling, instead of needing to do something like sit through a lot of boring therapy sessions or take a lot of medications. Well, I firmly believe that music and arts are amazing medicine for the mind. So I like to show people ways to use that to improve their lives.
Awesome. So let's just start there then. You obviously it's personal to you.
Mhm.
Kind of tell us what is so meaningful about it and why you advocate so hard for it.
Well, yeah, lots of reasons. I know I myself have struggled a lot with anxiety, depression, and eating disorders since I was younger. And I felt like what really helped me the most was diving into my creative work full out. I feel like the more that my life revolves around my creative work, the better things go for me, just as long as I have a healthy why to keep this all alive. And by healthy why, I mean that whatever you do, it's really important to know why you're doing it. So when I was just starting out as a guitarist, before I was even in my band Carcaza, I was really uh, uptight about it. I was like, I have to be the best. I have to prove myself. And it just wasn't very enjoyable for me at all. It just felt like self punishment a lot of the time. So, one thing that I do with my creative work for myself, and I show this to other people, is how to have a sense of humor about it. And you can still be so serious about what you do and so dedicated and committed and just full out going for it, but without being so uptight and without giving yourself more problems with anxiety, depression, imposter syndrome, and sleepless nights and mental health problems and all of that. And that's something that I portray through my comic book story. I know that I gave you a copy of
Yeah,
it.
it's awesome.
And in the beginning of my musical journey, I was just like this one. I was like, I can't stop till I make it to the top. And I had these ridiculous hours that I'd force myself to practice things that I didn't even enjoy sometimes because it was all discipline and almost no fun at all. And I was very motivated by like, oh, you and you and you're gonna love me. I really wanted to be liked by other people.
Sure.
And then for me, that just led to these inner demons leeching on my darkest feelings. But then, as I progress, I start to realize that I could actually tap into music and explore different types of art as something empowering. Like, yes, I have the power and actually enjoy it, but being no less serious about my professional goals in that way. And I apply that to all my entrepreneurship, so including my music education program and including performing and recording professionally. I apply that concept of being chill and relaxed about it while
Right.
pursuing my goals. And I think that that's something very important to show to other people because I think society glorifies a lot of extreme workaholism sometimes, and people get into a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with that. And life is all about balance. And I don't think we need to be glamorizing something like, oh, I only sleep 2 hours a day and I'm always miserable and I forget to eat all the time and I I'm always disgruntled and I'm super lonely, but oh, it's because I'm pursuing being a millionaire entrepreneur. Like,
Mhm.
you could be even more successful than you imagined by having a better balance in life.
Sure. So let's actually start kind of let's go back to the beginning then. At what age did you start getting involved in music? Was it as a youth? Was it kind of teenage years? Like when did you start realizing that that was something that was more passionate for you? Like let's focus like on you and your journey.
Yeah, like when I was a little kid, I was interested in music and singing along to things, but I didn't really pursue it in a structured way until I was a teenager. In early high school, I started playing the piano and, practicing a bit each day pretty much. And then just overall, I got more and more into it. What made me get really, really interested in pursuing music seriously instead of just a side hobby is when I was in late middle school, early high school. That's when I struggled with my first eating disorder, which was anorexia nervosa, and a lot of depression. I had a lot of actually like post-traumatic stress after that, because for me, the whole process of going through it and recovery was very rough. It was
Mhm.
not something where I felt very seen, understood, and supported. I didn't make friends with other girls going through the same thing or anything like that. It was very lonely. So I had a lot of disgruntled feelings about
Okay.
it. And just along the path, I started getting more interested in music as a way to escape the stress and
Sure.
feel better about it. But I didn't I did at first, I didn't have any artists that I was so into. I was just kind of exploring whatever's out there. I got into metal music at 16 because it really spoke to me. I had these disgruntled feelings. I've been through major depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of feelings about questioning if I want to live or not, feelings of not wanting to live and not knowing what kind of future I might have, or if I might just die now, and like that kind of thing. And
Sure.
because metal dives into those topics, they just boldly dive into talking about your anger and talking about death and talking about all these dark, morbid things that for me as a teenager, I was like so excited to see other people diving into those taboo topics, and the
Mhm.
fact that there's a whole metal culture around that stuff that's normally very taboo and off limits for the mainstream public.
Right.
And I like the feeling of independence that came with metal music. I feel like metal culture is ultimately about being yourself authentically. So that just really spoke to me. And that's what made me want to learn to play guitar and sing and songwrite. So, I continued playing the piano, of course, and there's still piano music even in my work with Carcasa. But I really like that I could balance the piano, guitar, singing, and
Mhm.
songwriting all together.
Okay. So going through this journey now, you're early high school, right? You're dealing with this depression and the anorexia and stuff like that. What did you do like on the daily to try to get yourself to the next day? Like, can you kind of walk us through that? I know it probably brings up some pretty bad memories and like some
Hey,
pretty
that's
hard
all.
times, but where you're at now versus where that was, you're obviously a much different person from
Yeah,
being a girl to now a woman and like
yeah.
kind of walk like through. So if somebody was watching and they're a teenager and they're dealing with the same stuff, how did you get through that? Like give us kind of like some insight of like what got you to the next step.
Yeah,
Because I'm
there.
sure there were pretty hard days, right?
Yes, of course. Like I had a period when I was like 13, 14, where I was just going through the motions, whatever I was assigned to do. Like, oh, go to school, do your homework. Okay, play some piano. And there wasn't much to it there. I did gymnastics when I was younger, but due to my physical condition, I actually got kicked off of a team at one point because they had some rules about like you have to be physically healthy to be allowed to continue with this.
Okay.
So like that was actually one motivation. Like I wanted to be able to get back into my sport and training full out instead of being kicked off a team, because that was very heartbreaking to me.
Mhm.
Before music was my passion, actually sports were my passion. So that was kind of, on one hand, a motivation to try to recover, but on the other hand, it was actually more so depressing, because it was like, well, just because I try to recover doesn't mean it actually works. Because back then in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, it was, the whole process of how to recover from an eating disorder was very archaic. Like,
Right.
doctors and psychologists just didn't really know what to do with it. And they said things back then that today modern therapists would just be like, what the fuck are you thinking?
Right.
Like,
Sure.
there's this big obsession with constantly weighing you, and then like talking about the number on the scale and all that stuff. Like, modern eating disorder recovery coaches actually ask you to not weigh yourself much. So it's like a complete 180. So yeah, I went through a period actually where I just like was pretty much just waiting to die because of that. But what really turned it around was one moment when I was in that feeling like I just didn't care about my life anymore. I had something like a vision of what my future could be like if I just continued pursuing being myself, that I could do something that other people in the world would value by me being my authentic self. And
Okay.
that kind of vision that I started imagining was very motivating for me, because now it was no longer about just, going through the motions and then thinking that if I could just escape everything, that would be much easier on me. It was about actually having a goal that's not only good for myself, but also good for other people, and really leave something to the world. That was very motivational for me. So I felt like I wanted to do something that reaches beyond just myself. So I realized then, that's when I was 14, going on 15, that I didn't want to just have a life where I, work a good job, make good money, have an income, because what went through my mind is that literally my corpse won't care about that stuff when I'm dead. Like, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, my income and what my grades, my income, my accomplishments in sports, even that is all temporary. But what lasts is what I can bring to other people. So
Mhm.
at that point, I did not know precisely what I wanted to do with my life yet. I was definitely interested in entrepreneurship, so I knew I wanted to do something with independent business.
Right.
But overall, it was just the idea that I could recover from this condition by being myself instead of trying to be someone else. And I could just continue being myself and give something valuable to others in the world.
Sure. Now, when you were going through this, did anybody notice anything? Did like anybody ever say anything to you like, wow, you really like should put on weight, or you look really bad, or like did anybody like kind of like
Yeah, of course, because the thing is, when you are very underweight, it shows obviously on you. Some
sure.
conditions, like if someone has a heart condition, that doesn't necessarily show physically, but
Hmm.
some conditions really show. But yeah, there's a lot of stigma about that, because when I was in high school, I had to overhear kids, making fun of me. Well, I wouldn't even say making fun, like a lot of ridicule of me, and they
Hmm.
spread rumors, and sometimes behind my back, sometimes to my face. Of course, like I said, that there was that time when I actually had to, I literally got kicked off of a gymnastics team that I was on, because they had
Hmm.
certain rules, and that makes sense that they have that. I mean, it makes perfect sense that a person should be physically healthy to do sports and involve death-defying acrobatics. So, you know, that's a perfectly logical rule that they had. It's just that it's so heartbreaking to have to hear that. And
Sure.
and yeah, the ironic thing was that it seemed like adults in my life were trying to use those consequences to scare me into recovery. And at first that was happening, but after I tried, following doctor's orders, following therapist orders, and that stuff was not working, I tried taking one of those psychiatric medications that actually did the opposite. It was supposed to make me calm down about food and ease anxiety, but instead it
Hmm.
triggered a lot of terrible migraines, which for me led to throwing up a lot and not being able to eat. And of
Sure.
course, if someone's struggling with eating disorder, throwing up and not being able to eat is a lot worse. So all that stuff just made me very demotivated in life.
Okay.
So the kinds of things that people said to me, though, I guess they were sometimes trying to be motivational for me, but they were using a sort of scare you into recovery
Yeah.
method, which I can see that working a little better for fully grown adults, but I think that for kids who don't yet know themselves, having to hear these negative things just makes you a lot more depressed and hopeless, because I'm like, okay, on one hand, I want to recover to get back to my life full out. But on the other hand, when I'm trying to recover and things are not working, now I'm just hopeless because now I'm hearing all of these basically predictions about how terrible my death would be. That was part of the things that adults said to me. Like,
Hmm.
they were like, oh, yeah, but if you don't recover, you're going to die slowly of starvation. Your organs are going to shut down one by one, and then you're going to start hallucinating, and you're going to be in miserable pain all day long. And I was like, okay, well, I would like to avoid that, but my efforts to avoid that are not working.
Right.
The recovery, you tell me the terrible consequence, but your recovery method is not working for me. So now all I have is fear over how terrible my death would be. Like, that's not working. So, yeah, I definitely do think that for people who are themselves going through hard times at a young age, or people who have kids who are going through mental health challenges, I do think using more of a positive reinforcement approach to that would be much better, because I think
Sure.
that people don't always realize that when they're trying to scare young people into
Hmm.
a positive change, it actually ends up just making them more and more depressed, angry, and hopeless. So I
Right.
think that instead we have to motivate young people with how good things will be. Like I said, I got motivated when I started visualizing my life
Right.
as like being my authentic self and giving something valuable to the world. See, going on trying to get something positive rather than trying to avoid something negative. Because there are always going to be days in your mental health journey where things are not going well. Like, you're trying
Hmm.
to heal, but it's just not working. And what you need to have in your life in order to keep going is some sort of positive vision, like a light at the end of the tunnel, something good that you are going for that keeps you moving, not just trying to escape
Right.
punishment.
Sure. Now, when you were going to the doctors, were you accepting of this? Were you like, okay, let's try to figure this out? Or were you like, this isn't going to work. I'm wasting my time. What am I doing here? Like, how were you like personally, like going and seeing them? Were you accepting of it or were you kind of like standoffish?
Okay, yeah, I kind of like pass through both, right? Like some of this and some of that, because sometimes I would be hopeful. I'm like, okay, I understand this. I understand. Even my own project of weight loss got way too far, because for me, when I started at 12 going on 13, what I really wanted was a feeling of independent self control over myself. So restricting food was how I did that. But
Okay.
then at some point, when I saw that there were tangible consequences in my life, like things that I love doing disappearing, even I was like, oh shit, this has gone too far. And at first, I was kind of hopeful about getting help. But then when the help actually hurt more, then I started to get really hopeless and disgruntled. And then it was just like, this is stupid. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't really getting anything positive from that. And now I think that we see those kinds of things a lot in society. To this day, there's still a lot of stigma that you should try to scare a person and punish them into self-improvement, when really what ends up happening with that is that you tend to see some quick initial results. If you motivate someone with fear, pain, and punishment, they can make some progress early on very quickly, but it doesn't last, because the second they start to have a rough day with that, you've just triggered a lot of stress, anxiety, and fear in
Hmm.
them. And then that anxiety can snowball into something a lot worse. So, like, for example, let's say in the context of performing musicians, like, let's say if you have a show coming up and say the band leader is trying to motivate the others with fear and punishment, like, oh, if you can't play well, not only will I kick you out of the band, but then you'll be blacklisted and the whole industry will hate you and no one will want to work with you and your whole career will be over, and then you're just going to die broken alone. Well, okay, yeah, that'll motivate your musicians to practice more for that show, but they'll have their whole nervous system so heavily wired with anxiety that they'll probably make a lot of like silly anxiety ridden mistakes on stage,
Hmm.
because now they're going to have terrible stage fright, horrible performance anxiety, and now instead of their hands flowing free and smooth, they're going to be really stiff and tense. Instead of singing with a good vocal release, they'll have a lot of vocal tension, and everything's just going to be stiff, uptight, and it's not go very well.
Right.
So I think that people really have got to rethink the way that they motivate
Sure.
each other and themselves.
So, when you were dealing with this, did you have any other kids that were kind of in your age range that were going through anything that you could talk to? Did you have an outlet? Was there anybody else that could relate to what you were going through, or did you just do this all on your own?
Yeah, exactly. All on my own, and because yeah, at that point I did not like in the couple of years prior to that, my best friend was someone who was very bony and scrawny, and I don't know her medical history, but she definitely had a lot of symptoms of disordered eating. She
Hmm.
was like, one day she just wouldn't want to eat anything. She's like, no,
Right.
I can't eat. I can't gain weight at like what, 11 years old. But and
Yeah.
then another day she would just binge out on a ton of junk food, and she was like body shaming me a lot because I was a little bit fuller than her. Not a lot fuller, but a bit fuller
Okay.
than her. And then we kind of split up because she wanted to just kind of, by the time we were 13, she wanted to go along a different path in life. We just started to have different interests.
Sure.
And then in school, the friends that I had were kind of standoffish about it. They were,
Okay.
not really treating me as an equal to the others. No one else was going through that same thing. And I didn't go to one of those rehab facilities with the other girls because it's actually an interesting reason why. Because on the one hand, I kind of wish that I could go on vacation for
Hmm.
1 or 2 months and make a bunch of friends who have the same thing that I'm going through, and we all support each other. But because I had such a bitter taste in my mouth from other like doctors and psychologists and medication that didn't work, I felt like the adults around me who were trying to get me to recover, I felt like it was very objectifying and dehumanizing because they were focusing so much on just the number on the scale. They were
Right.
accusing me of not trying, like, oh, our plan is so great. So if it's not working, that means that you don't care and you're not trying. You're just being selfish and all that stuff. So I felt like they could not understand my mindset around it.
Right.
So, yeah, that's why I was very lonely and why I developed those disgruntled feelings that ultimately got me really interested in heavy metal. So it was actually through the metal community where I ended up having more of that
Okay.
connection with other people, because I felt like starting to pursue music, we could talk about our favorite songs and why we like them. And then talking about music is a good entry point into talking about other things in your life because you're not just diving right into, hello, I'm I have
Right.
depression. Hello, I have bipolar. Hello, I have schizophrenic. Hello, I'm a drug addict. Hi, I'm anorexic. We're
Right.
not just diving right into that. Instead, we're starting out by talking about songs that we like and why we relate to them. And it just more
Sure.
smoothly transitions you into being emotionally open with each other.
Yeah. Now, fast forward 20 years now, right, since high school. Do any of the people from high school like still contact you and say, like, are they supportive now? Are they apologetic? Do they say, I wish we would have known? Like, how's your relationship with those kids today?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I do still have some of my classmates as Facebook friends, and it's like the standard long distance Facebook friends because I
Sure.
went to school in San Diego, California. Now we live
Hmm.
in Alabama, and yeah, we chat with each other there on
Okay.
the social media. We haven't really addressed our issues like that because what we're doing
Right.
now as adults with these nostalgic memories. Some of my best friends from high school went to our wedding, which was in 2017. And what we did was focus on the positive. We're like, we didn't even talk about the past that much, maybe a little bit, not
Okay.
a whole lot. We were mainly talking about like catching up with each other, like what are you up
Sure.
to these days, talking
Yeah.
about new goals and dreams. So, it's been really nice and refreshing because we got to a point where we really emphasize the positive
Hmm.
elements, which is really good to have because it's not in a toxic positivity kind of way where
Right.
we're denying any issues.
Okay.
We're honest with each other, but we're mainly looking forward.
Okay. Perfect. Now, I kind of wanted to talk about something you mentioned earlier on in the very beginning of the discussion is balance, right? And
Yeah.
so let's focus on like somebody who wants to practice versus somebody who wants to be perfect, right? How are you with your music, right? I was awful at music, right? I was never musically inclined, right? I love heavy metal and I love listening to music, but as a musician, I'm terrible, right?
That's
My
funny.
right. So my focus was always on sports, right? As a kid,
Yeah.
baseball to soccer to basketball to football, like I always excelled in everything on the field, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of my motivation with especially my dad, being there for me and telling me what to do and showing me what was your balance like? You said earlier that you want to do good and you want to be the best, but at what point do you realize I either need a break or it's too much? Like, kind of walk us through your journey in playing music and when you realize that I played for 6 hours and I'm exhausted, but if I played for another hour, I might be at like we always have that one more rep, right? One more note, one more like the drive is there. How is that balance for you?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I did come from first a sports background with gymnastics, which is an extremely competitive sport because there isn't even a team, really. You compete against your own team members. A team is
Mhm.
just the people in your same gym, but you're still competing against each other.
Correct.
So
Right.
at first, I brought that into music because I was used to being ranked against other people. So I was very competitive. Every time I saw another guitarist, I would try to beat them. And I was trying to figure out what I need to do to be considered one of the best guitarists of my era and all that stuff. And then as I get into it more and more, I realize music is much more subjective than sports are because there are so many different genres and styles within genres and
Mhm.
different purposes of playing. And ultimately, it's really not about technicality. Someone like Kurt Cobain or Ozzy Osbourne, who are not very technically skilled at what they do, they can have a lot more love from their fans than someone who is extremely technically skilled could be because they are relating to people on
Sure.
a deeper level. So just realizing that music is a lot of things, not just one thing. And to this day, I still do train a lot. Like I do a combination of some CrossFit meets, some powerlifting meets, and a lot of dance performances. And for me, music and dance has always been an essential combo because I do get diminishing returns if I just practice metal guitar. I have to first of all vary the genres and also vary the instruments. I feel like
Okay.
playing classical piano helps with my metal guitar, and playing acoustic guitar helps with my metal and piano and all that stuff. Singing
Sure.
opera helps with my scream vocals, and dancing definitely helps with my sense of rhythm, flow, structure, continuity, and emotional expression in music. So I feel like in order for me to be the best musician I can be, I do have to combine elements of a lot of other disciplines to be able to just be the best. Because there was a point when I was studying music in college that I was very focused on just technical guitar. I would play the same sweep picking drills and tapping drills and scales, and sometimes I get worse at them. I'm like, boy, my guitar professor would be like, "Hey, you just need to practice more." Like I did practice more, and I got worse at it. This
Right.
it was last week. There's a thing of diminishing
Sure.
returns. Physiologically, when your body repeats the exact same motion a lot, what happens is your body tries to find the most comfortable way to do it, and it tries to take shortcuts. And then when your body is taking shortcuts, that's where you end up actually getting some sloppier technique because your fingers are now trying to find out if they can take a shortcut from this note to that note.
Right.
So that is where the balance comes in. And even just with my perception, like it happens that right now as we're recording this, we're in the middle of the CrossFit Open season.
Yeah.
And this past week was the first open workout. And I felt like I just had to give it a ton of deep focus. And it happens that just before doing that open WOD, I had a solo performance. It was one of my solo. When I perform solo as Lilia the Inner Demon Crusher, I do basically one woman musical dance theater performance. I create a story, and it's basically song and dance routine,
Mhm.
then speak, then song and dance routine, and then speak in that formula, the musical theater style. And I found that the concentration in one element helps with concentration in another. So
Okay.
concentrating on my solo theater show helps me concentrate on CrossFit, which also helps me to concentrate on the music. And they all feed into each other.
Okay.
So yeah, that balance of disciplines, but also balance with just taking breaks. Like, but before we started, remember we were talking about how we just came back from a trip. We
Hmm.
just went on a cruise right before one of my shows, and that whole thing of just being disconnected is very valuable and healthy and actually very productive. Specifically on a cruise, you have very limited internet access. And at first I was freaking out. I gotta check my work email every day, and I gotta keep working on my ideas. I gotta update my website. I gotta do all these things. And I
Hmm.
realized that first off, life moves on even if I'm disconnected for a work week.
Sure.
And second of all, it's not only that it's okay to disconnect, it actually helps because when you're not doing an activity, you allow your brain to have time to process all that has been going on, and your brain makes new connections. And you can actually come out of that break with new innovative ideas. So for
Hmm.
creatives, actually taking time away to do nothing related to your work actually helps your work become better when you get back to it. Just the
Right.
same way that if you work out, you have to take a rest day in order for your muscle fibers to repair. You can't do squat day every single day. You're going to get diminishing returns. That exact same type of process happens with your brain as well.
Sure. Now, let's talk about, like, obviously we all have schedules and we all try to stay focused on them, right? But at what point does the anxiety kick in, then the stress, then the sleepless nights because your brain just can't turn off? What are some things you do to kind of decompress and just kind of like ease back and like because we all have hectic lives, right? And we all have calendars, we all have schedules, we all have, and then you're trying to remember dates and times and stuff. That plays into the anxiety role, right?
Yeah.
What are some things you do to kind of like just kind of take a step back? Obviously, the things you enjoy doing, but what's your balance like with your schedule? Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, like I think that there's a lot of simple strategies that we could use to make that all simpler. Like one thing that me and Bruno do is that we make our schedules very visible. So we have these refrigerator magnets that are like what you call like whiteboard magnets for
Yeah,
the
right.
refrigerator where we
Yeah,
write the important dates of things we got to do. So that helps because it helps ease the feeling like you have to remember it all because you know where to look for it. I do like using my phone calendar to schedule what I'm
nice.
going to do in that day. And I also like to designate certain hours of the day for things. Like in the morning before lunchtime, I do my music and dance practice and physical fitness practice. Then after lunchtime, I meet with my clients. So that's for the music education element of things. I meet with my clients. Weekends, we really have designated for shows. Instead of teaching clients on the weekends, we have that for performing and traveling so that way we don't have a ton of schedule conflicts between coaching sessions and our shows. You know, and sometimes when we need to reschedule a client during the week, we can do that pretty well with communication.
Sure.
I do use some things like I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro technique. So, Pomodoro means tomato in Italian, and it's nothing related to tomatoes at all. That's just the name for it, kind of
Hmm.
arbitrary. But the Pomodoro technique is where you designate a certain interval to work and a certain interval to mentally rest. The standard for that is 25 minutes of work followed by 5 minutes of rest and repeat the cycle. But it doesn't have to be 25 and 5. It can vary. I personally like to do, no, it kind of depends on the task that I'm doing, but a lot of the time I do 40 minutes of work and then 5 minutes of rest, and then do that twice and then take like 10 or 15 minutes off, like 40 work, 5 rest, 40 work, 5 rest, and then like 10 to 15 minutes of
Okay.
rest to really recharge. But I think that the concept of not letting yourself accumulate mental fatigue is very important. That's the main idea behind the Pomodoro technique. It's not so much about what minutes you have for work and rest, but it
Sure.
is about the idea that you don't work yourself into mental exhaustion all at once
Okay.
because what you're doing is having a good amount of time to work to where you can be productive and accomplish a task, but then you're letting your brain rest and digest.
Sure.
And what I do is I actually try to physically step away from my workstation. So, like, let's say if I'm working on my website on the computer during that 5 minute rest interval, I actually physically step away from the computer so I don't stay on my computer and watch YouTube. I actually physically get away from it.
Correct.
And it is like magic. If I was struggling with something, how do I make this layout of photos on my website and how am I supposed to phrase my headings? I'm trying to write this about paragraph in a way that is clear yet streamlined. How do I do that? I get frustrated by that. I keep having to write and edit and write and edit.
Yeah.
And then, okay, the alarm goes ding, 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 rest interval. It's kind of like on one hand, I'm like, no, I really want to figure this out. I need to keep going. But on the other hand, respect the rest interval. Okay, so I
Sure.
do that. The moment I step away within like 30 seconds, I'm like, ding, that's what I should do. It's like the light bulb just comes
Right.
right on. So I think that's super valuable. I recommend that to my music students as well. If they have a lot to practice and it takes them like 2 hours, you can consider doing some sort of a Pomodoro intervallic type of
Hmm.
thing. Now you can apply
Sure.
that to any kind of work that you do, and I think it's just so helpful.
Okay. Now, let's talk about how obviously social media is a big thing, right? And people are so focused on that, and it really kind of induces the mental health because they feel like they have to post and they have to keep going and keep going and keep going. We grew up in a generation where there was no internet, right? When I was a kid,
Yeah,
it
I
didn't
know
exist.
first.
And it kind of makes it seem like now we're so dedicated to our phones and our laptops and our social media and all our devices that we've kind of lost track of like what life really is supposed to be about, which is going out and doing things and seeing
Yeah.
things. How do you separate the generations of kids now where they grow up with technical devices at such a young age? When I was a kid, I didn't have a Nintendo till I was 7 years old, right? I didn't know what a video game was. Now at 5 years old, these kids are right in front of TVs and playing games and on their laptops and tablets and stuff. What do you think is the next like step for integration for kids and mental health? Obviously, you're a teacher and you have students. What do you see in your kids? Do you notice anything that kind of like sticks out to you as saying like, wow, this is really like a bad habit, but you obviously you're not their parent, so you can't break them. But like, what do you see in their lives that sticks out to you?
Yeah, something that I hear from parents is that some parents find it difficult to get their child to practice music or do pretty much any hobby away from their tablet. Because I've noticed this trend of parents wanting to sign up their children for hobbies to get them away from electronic devices, which I
Hmm.
think is very good. But then it's also a challenge to be able to accomplish that. So then you have these two different options. Okay, should we recommend music related games for their tablet? And I do some of that. Sometimes when I hear, okay, this child student really wants to play on their tablet, I recommend music related games for their tablet. And then another part of it is to make their non electronics activities even more rewarding. It's like use rewards. I really emphasize playing songs that they like. That's for both kids and adults, because
Sure.
adults also have a lot of stress in their lives. When
Absolutely.
they have hobbies, what they really want is an escape, not
Yeah.
a hard edge discipline to make you have to work harder. Oh, you just went to work
Yep.
and now here's a bunch of really technical, complicated, difficult things to play on piano or guitar. They really want to relax. So what I do
Hmm.
is I try to make the whole environment relaxing and fun. And I do use a lot of positive reinforcement. I remember to not only give corrections when they make an error, but also to tell them that was good when they did well.
Sure.
And, let them talk about what their favorite songs are and why they want to play them. I also do some music therapy coaching. So what I do some for the music therapy is that I have some questions that I ask them to reflect on the song, like what do you like about the song? What does it mean to you? How do you relate to it? So the more you can get someone emotionally engaged in an activity, the more they'll want to do that instead of being glued to their electronics. And I
Hmm.
also think that social media definitely can feed poor mental health because there's a lot of radical extremism on social media these days. And a lot of people getting wacky ideas for things to do based on social media, everything
Right.
from the cinnamon challenge and weird
Yeah.
internet challenges to getting more and more like hyper sensational mindsets
Sure.
going on and paranoid conspiracy theories and stuff like that. I do think that a social media diet is good for people, like limit the amount of time you spend on it.
Yep.
But I also think that it goes into just realizing that there's a boundary between the social media world and the physical world.
That's true.
Just like always reminding yourself of
That's
that. If someone can stick to their social media dosage, okay, 20 minutes a day on Instagram and 20 minutes a day on YouTube or whatever it is. But I think that your mindset going into it matters more so than the quantity. Another
sure.
person can spend like 4 hours a day on social media and not be fazed by it. Or someone else can spend 30 minutes on social media and start to
Yeah.
get become a paranoid conspiracy
Sure.
theorist based on how deeply they dove into it.
That's
So I
it.
think it's just always keeping that in mind, that the social media world is not the real world, understanding that you're seeing the highlight reel of people's lives and not the behind the scenes. So when you try to compare your life to someone else's based on what you see on the internet, know that they are just showing what they felt like showing. Like,
Mhm.
all I don't post on Facebook rants about my deep emotional hardships, but I do post my vacation photos.
Sure.
It's not
Right.
because I'm trying to brag about my cruise to the Bahamas or my trip to
Yeah.
Bulgaria or Jamaica or anything like that. It's not because I'm trying to brag, but I just feel like
Sure.
the internet is social media is not the place for me to talk about my deep, heavy feelings. I feel like that's more stuff that I should do with people in my personal life,
Absolutely. I
not
get it.
social media. And also, I feel like there is so much drama on the internet that I can contribute positivity to the internet. And I try to do it in a constructive way. Like, not only do I show my cruise photos, I also tell them that, hey, if you want an affordable, relaxing getaway, a cruise is actually a surprisingly affordable way
Sure.
to get your vacation time in. That's what a way you can experience luxury within your budget. Actually
Hmm.
doing something constructive for people there, not just showing
Sure.
off my stuff.
Right.
So I think all of that. And I also think that for those of us who are creators, like, myself and Bruno have to post on social media a lot.
Sure.
And I think that we sometimes we start to feel very overwhelmed by how much effort it takes to make content and post and teach our
Yeah.
clients and play our shows and
It's
travel and
it's
all of that.
tough.
Yeah, so what we do is it's just experience. With experience, you start to get a better and better gauge for what you can accomplish each week and each month and
Yeah.
how long tasks tend to take. So, the more that you post on your social media, the more you have a gauge of how long it takes to post. The more videos you make, the more you can understand how long it takes to make a certain type of video. The more that we start to know what kinds of videos are more worth our time versus which are just going to take forever but not really
Right.
give us better engagement. So a lot of that just comes from experience. So if you're someone who is some kind of content creator, just let yourself have that kind of experience and don't be so worried if right out the gate you don't have it all figured out. And, just give yourself time to figure it out.
Sure. Now let's move into I obviously, you mentioned teaching and coaching and stuff like that. If one of your students comes up to you and says, I'm dealing with this and I'm dealing with that, what's your relationship between the student and then their parents? Obviously, I don't want you to say too much because obviously I don't want to, your reputation is on the line. But like, what's your balance with that? Like, are you approachable with the parents? Can you talk to them freely, or is it just kind of you're their teacher and that's it? Like, what's the kind of the relationship between the student and the parents and you? Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it really depends because some students are more open. Some of them just want to play their music and go. So it really all depends. I've actually found that the teens and adults tend to be more open. The children tend to, well, what the children do is they tend to either just want to play the music and not really say much, or they just
Sure.
get into this is what I did today, and that's what I'm going to do next week.
Right.
And I did this at school, just kind of going off on things. And usually, when I do have a special needs student of some kind, they're pretty open with it.
Okay.
So, like the parent will say up front, my child has autism, or my child has been going through a lot of stress lately, or my child has been bullying and now wants a relaxing escape from that. So they're usually pretty honest and upfront about it. I have had some of the younger kid students where the parent doesn't really know about their mental health condition yet because they're still young and haven't gotten diagnosed yet. And, I didn't try to diagnose them, but, sometimes I would just, if I see that the parent is a pretty open person, just kind of
Okay.
slightly nudge at like, you might
Yeah.
want to think, they have some sign of possible dyslexia, possibly on the ADHD spectrum, something like that.
Hmm.
Just kind of putting it out there in general,
Okay.
but not too firmly.
Sure.
And yeah, sometimes they do talk to me, their music instructor, about something they've been going through that's difficult. And what I do there is just try to find them the best song to relieve that stress. Like, I've been going through a really bad breakup. I just split up with my fiance. Like, oh, I know some really fun breakup songs for
Hmm.
you. Or, man, the bullying at school. I got bullied a lot lately. I got into fights. So then I just try to figure out the best way to get them to refocus. Just like
Okay.
focus on something besides the difficulty they went through. And, just using music as that healthy outlet for
Sure.
emotional release.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now, just out of curiosity, what songs would you pick? Like, what do kids that you're teaching, like, do they get to pick songs they want to play? Do you encourage them to learn basic songs?
Yeah.
Like, what's your structure? Like, I'm just curious. I'm kind of,
I try to not do too many just technical drills. I try to instead pick a song that's related to some technique that they should learn. Oh
okay.
yeah, I like to take a lot of requests
All right.
and some specific songs that I go to a lot. I mean, definitely the Smoke on the Water main riff is great for
Hmm.
guitars because it could get a beginner to feel like a rock
Sure.
star right away. Uh, Another funny situation that I had was one of my adult clients who started out as just doing regular music instruction, and I went to music therapy after that. Had been struggling with splitting up with their fiance. So that's something, very difficult to go through when you
Sure.
imagine yourself getting married and suddenly you're not. So I recommend some good breakup songs. One of them that I heard a couple of years back that I really liked actually was Me by Kelly Clarkson because
Hmm.
just it's all about like I don't need somebody to scold me, don't need somebody to hurt me, don't need someone who feels weak standing next to me, don't need somebody who projects all their insecurities onto me when I
Okay.
got me. I thought that was pretty cool. And then Metallica ballads are good for kids who are, and I don't know if I want to call them like goth kids, but yeah, kind of
Yeah.
goth kids, the kids who like to wear
Sure.
black, the kids
Yeah.
who do have some disgruntled feelings about themselves. Because a good thing about metal ballads like Metallica, Fade to Black, or Sanitarium, like Pantera, Cemetery Gates, things like that, they have this moodiness, but it's also melodic. So it's kind of relaxing, but it's also
Hmm.
energizing and empowering at the same time because they have the soft acoustic parts and they have the heavy riffs. So it lets
Right.
them go through this different cycle of emotions, which is really fun to do. So yeah, those are some songs, and then
Sure.
that's like musical theater type
Right.
songs for the
Oh yeah.
vocal students. Musical theater songs are very physically satisfying because you can just belt it out. Something very satisfying about the release of just going just
Hmm.
letting your belt fly.
Right.
That can be really fun. So
Sure.
overall, I try to get people to have fun with music, whether they're just doing music for performance or music therapy. I always like to make it fun.
Awesome. So, what the last thing we'll touch on real quick is that, we've covered a lot about your journey and everything else like that. Where do you see the state of mental health going? Are you an advocate for people finding out about themselves and looking into themselves, and or are you just because I know there's a lot of people, like, especially like in my line of work, right? Everybody's told to bottle up your feelings, right? Just go through the day, suck it up, be a guy, right? And it's very hard to let loose and have an outlet, right? Like, I'm very blessed that I have the podcast because this is my outlet. What do you do? What do you encourage people who might not have that outlet? Give them some encouragement of where they could find things to do, what they could do, where they could go. If you know any, because somebody watching might say, I don't know where to send my kid, or I don't know where to go. But like, kind of point us in some directions that you might know.
Yeah, outlets like creative work. If you can do something that involves being with other people who enjoy the same thing you do, and something that is like a stepping stone to people being more open about themselves. Like for example, like playing in any kind of music groups, like a school band or a choir, church choir, community theater, like that could help. CrossFit is actually a surprisingly good outlet for that because y'all are starting out by doing the same workout, you relate to each other, and then that is a stepping stone to being able to talk about other things in your life. Like, let's say if I had a lot of trouble focusing on this workout today because of this stress going on, and on top of that, I'm on the ADHD spectrum. I feel like people, when they're in a state of physical pain from those
Sure.
workouts, I feel like that somehow makes them more open and less judgmental. Because I
Okay.
think that when people are in a state of being like perfectly good, I think that they want to maintain everything being all good. Like people, oh, my heart rate is already gone high and my muscles are sore. I feel like that somehow makes people a lot more open to discussing other things in their lives that are less than ideal, but that they want some connection on. I just found that because, yeah, I relate to a lot of what you're saying about, needing to bottle up your feelings. Because I was in that place when I was in the college age,
Hmm.
because I feel like college students can be very competitive, and I was
Sure.
studying music, and it's a place where people were doing the same type of performance art and all competing
Right.
against one another. So it's ironically, you would think that a music institute would be where people are open, but in
Yeah.
reality, it's where everyone was trying to step on top of each other. And there was a
Okay.
lot of fake friends networking. There's a lot of
Sure.
things where people pretend to be interested in you, but really they're only interested as long as you do something useful for them.
Right.
Like, I need a guitarist for the show. I need a drummer for that show. After that, you mean
Yeah.
nothing to me. You're dead to me. Yeah, I feel like society encourages a lot of bottling up feelings. And then at the same time, there's also another extreme where, some people advocate for just like spilling feelings to everyone. Like, I've seen some people who are in 12-step groups who will just meet a stranger and just say, "Hey, by the way, I'm in this 12-step group, and here's what I'm doing, here's how it's going." And that's kind of a lot to say all at once. So again,
Sure. Oh,
balance
I get it.
balancing is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that as far as outlets, if you can find those places where people are bonding over a shared activity, that becomes a stepping stone to talking about other elements of your life, I think that that's
Hmm.
really good to do.
Yeah. So, because I know we've talked about, on Facebook, right? And we started this community, right? And we're kind of doing this mental health thing that we're gonna plan for, the next month or so. And I really want to get on the topic of community involvement on social media, right? Because I have one set of people are anti community groups on Facebook, and then I have another set of people that are pro anti or pro community groups. And it's a very diverse mix of when you join a group on social media, whether it's through Facebook or TikTok or, Instagram or whatever, where you kind of get a group of like-minded people. And a lot of people join these communities thinking that they're going to find new friends and that they're going to find new, and then they kind of find themselves in this morphed thing where it's like you have a community of you think like-minded people, but then it gets into the cyberbullying and the putting down and the questions. And I kind of want to get, I don't want to go too deep into it now, but what has been your kind of experiences with community groups on social media? Are you pro? Are you against? Do you have a little bit of both? Because it's a very sensitive topic and I want to save it for the group, but I also kind of want to touch on it because obviously I'm in a lot of groups on social media, right? And they're all like-minded groups, metal community, podcasting, different things that I like to do. But a lot of the groups within the groups are very like it's it's kind of hard to describe it, but you join a community, think you're going to be accepted. And then the next thing you know, there's cliques within the group. And you have to
Oh,
kind of, so what's your experience been like with community groups? Do you like them? Don't like them? Just kind of, you don't have to go too deep, but I just kind of want to get your view of them.
that really depends because, yeah, like you're saying, I've seen some groups that are just kind of go better than others. Like one thing that comes to mind is that for a couple years, when I first started my Inner Demon Crusher brand, I made this comic book and I wanted to promote it to other people who'd be interested and make collaborations. So I joined a lot of these entrepreneurship type groups where we are working with entrepreneurs related to mental health, wellness, or creative work.
Hmm.
And what I found is that like everyone seems to just want to sell supplements to each other. Everyone's just trying to promote things to each other, and
Okay.
they had a lot of that fake friends
So
networking.
yeah,
And then I have also been in some groups related to fitness on Facebook, and some of them have been very welcoming. Like there's a group
sure.
called Handstands Anonymous where they're post like handstand type
Right.
work,
Yeah.
which is I thought that that was really open because they were so accepting of people at all different levels, like people who are barely learning a handstand against a wall, and the most elite hand balancers in the world who could stay on one arm for like
Sure.
half an hour if they wanted to, just to contort themselves on one arm and do anything.
Hmm.
I thought that was really cool. But then I've been on some groups about fitness, like one of them was about calisthenics, body weight
Sure.
exercise, and they were just so hostile right away, man. My very first
Okay.
post, I said I'd like to introduce myself, want to be here to like help give people tips on that, and they're like, you'd learn more from us than we would from you. And then they started like speculating on how good I
Okay.
am. And then I felt like every
So,
time I posted something, they make this competition of like, is she
right.
good or is she just faking it? Or trying to criticize something about, trying to find something to criticize about my technique or something. And it was just like all kinds of crazy. I felt like almost everyone there was just looking for something to
Sure.
badmouth. So
Okay.
it depends.
Yeah, so this is kind of where I want like the topic to be when we do our group stuff discussion, because I'm pro finding a group that fits you, but I'm also anti-group for that reason because there is a lot of people that kind of, have their certain place and they feel that they can control you and tell you what to post and what not to post and how to do it. And it's like, I'm not asking for your help. I'm just saying, hey, here I am. If you like what I'm doing, I'll follow you, you follow
Yeah.
me type of thing. And I just kind of wanted to get your take on that because I really feel like in the mental health space, especially with social media, that is a very antagonistic thing to do, right? You want to join a group thinking, oh, well, I'm going to be against amongst friends who like the same stuff I do. And then you find in that group, it's not the case. So that's kind of where I want the topic to be when we start it. So, obviously, I kind of let the cat out of the bag now, but it's no
Yeah.
secret. But we're planning a group. Lily is a part of it.
Yeah.
I have some other people that I have had on my podcast that have been discussing mental health, and we're all going to do a big podcast together. And we're all going to just kind of pick each other's brains on how to navigate through this world with a little bit of sanity and a little bit of fun and a little bit of less stress, right? Because that's what it's all about. We only live one life, and we have to make it the best one we can. And all the other stuff, they're all just byproducts of our brain, right? Like you stress and stress and stress and you worry, you get to the point, you get through it and you're like, wow, why did I waste all that time worrying when it turned out great anyways, right? So,
Yeah.
I think we all deal with that and we all kind of put ourselves through that, that brain working of racking our brain and, overthinking and stressing and, being so meticulous that it has to come down to it. And then when the event actually happens, you're like, wow, that wasn't so bad, right? I didn't need
Yeah,
to
a lot
do
of the
that.
time. A lot of the time, yes, we struggle more with the anticipation and
Sure.
the event itself. I've had a few times where actually it was the opposite. I thought something would be easy, but then it turned out to be very
Sure.
difficult, stressful. So I could go both ways on that. I've noticed that, specifically with mental health groups on social media, some of them that I've been a part of have actually been very constructive. Like I've been on one about eating disorder recovery.
Sure.
It's like supporting people on that, kind of giving my advice on it. And I haven't found anything antagonistic about that. So I feel like people there were pretty
Helpful.
good about like,
Okay.
yeah, being helpful. And then if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. I haven't really seen. I don't know. Part of it might be that the admins are very active about deleting stuff that sounds
Okay.
antagonistic because some groups are very monitored by admins, others not so much. Others are
Sure.
just free for all. So I think that if you see a group where everything seems very supportive, it might be partially the work of the admins on it to
Right. That
keep
could
that.
be true.
But you never know. Maybe it could just
Yeah.
be the context of the whole thing. So yeah, it's one of those things where you really don't know until you try it for sure. But
Sure.
I do think that kind of encouraging a certain type of thing from the get go is good. Like I've
Okay.
been in one, not social, maybe like a Zoom networking community for
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, and I thought that that did a pretty good job about emphasizing collaboration over competition. Even though
Okay.
people kept on trying to sell their services to each other, I feel like they did it in a
Sure.
more collaborative kind of
Right.
way. Like genuinely, my service could really help you, and
Sure.
yours could help me kind of thing. So I think it's definitely something that's worth trying out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So as we're wrapping things up, go ahead and plug yourself. Where could we find you? Where could we find your band? What do you got going on? Tour dates, anything coming up? Tell the world where they could see you
Yeah.
and find you.
Lots of links, lots of stuff. Well, my main website about my Inner Demon Crusher brand is called liliademoncrusher.com. If you're watching on the video, I think there's actually a page. There actually is. Oh, yes, I did include on my comic book, I did include that about the author page with
Sure.
my various handles and stuff.
Yeah.
But yes, if you go on to liliademoncrusher.com, that's the best place to see a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Information about what I do. I did accomplish one of my New Year's resolutions, which is start a Substack publication. So on Substack, I am at Inner Demon Crusher. And on that Substack blog, it's a weekly blog where I write about various topics related to mental health
Okay.
in a more storytelling kind of way. I'll post my videos and just give a more thorough explanation than you would find in a YouTube description about what you can take away from that. So definitely check out substack.com/inner demon crusher. And same with YouTube. You can check me out there. I'm on all the various
I'll
social
link
media.
everything on the
Yeah.
description like I did last time. But if anybody's watching and doesn't, because sometimes after the lives are done, they just they're in the forethought of everybody's mind now. And they're like, so I obviously on my YouTube channel, guys, I'll link everything like I did before. But this is just kind of a plug if anybody's watching now where they could maybe just check you out real
Yeah.
quick and
And
kind
I
of go from
do,
there.
yeah, I do like to let people know that I also give out a free demo of my comic book. It's a digital PDF. All you do is just put email address and it sends it right to you. It's a digital PDF of the first chapter of the Inner Demon Crusher comic book. And that I can send you a link to post in the YouTube for that as
Sure.
well.
I'll do that for sure.
So you can check that out, get a little taste of it before you see the whole story. But this comic book can be found on Amazon. It's the series Lilia, the Inner Demon Crusher. This volume is called Workaholism versus Food Porn, and that is on Amazon too.
Perfect. So thank you for being a guest. Well, we're obviously going to have you on again, right? We're going to
Yeah.
do this group thing here. So that'll probably be end of March or April. We're trying to iron out some dates. So we'll have everybody back on, guys. That's going to be a big one because it's going to be I'm hoping to have 5 or 6 people on, and we'll all
Cool.
just kind of navigate through this together and help each other out in this universe that we live in. So, with that being said, I thank you for being back on. We'll definitely have you on again, and we'll keep things going. And I wish you all the best. And I'll link everything in, and hopefully, the comic book and the music and everything is, going your way, and we'll get you back on, and we'll have another discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I look forward to doing it with the whole group. That'll be cool to bounce
Yeah, it'll
ideas
be
off.
fun.
Cool.
Yeah, well, it'll definitely be neat because then obviously, different people have different perspectives. Elliot wrote a comic book too, so he's got that connection with you. And then Maddie actually is an advocate for mental health, and she's trying to get, her starting business up. And so it's very interesting because a lot of people, have a good positivity towards it, which is awesome, which is what I want to show. And I just think in a group setting, I think just having everybody and everything they've been through and stories that they could tell would just be entertaining and interesting. And that maybe help somebody who's struggling and sees the show
Yeah,
might be able to say, hey, listen, I could reach out to one of these people, which anybody who's watching this, if you need to get a hold of me, one fun guy podcast at gmail.com. It's linked in my bio. It'll be linked everywhere. That's where you find me. If you ever need anything, send me an email. I respond. Send me a link on Facebook, YouTube, wherever. Get a hold of me. I'll definitely reply.
yeah, that's awesome.
So,
Yeah, they,
so yeah, well,
yeah, I'm also very open to that. Um, yeah, through my website, liliademoncrusher.com. You can contact me to there or info@liliademoncrusher.com. I do like to respond to emails and
sure.
also social media messages. So yeah, anyone who's listening, you can reach out to me that way.
Perfect. And like I said, guys, I'll link everything in the bios on Facebook and on YouTube. I'll send Lilia the links so she can post them all around. And guys, keep in touch. And if you know anybody who's struggling with anything that they might need a hand with, feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you guys with professionals of people who do this. I had Paranoia Threat. She's a 988 operator. So she's on the suicide prevention. That's her job. So like she'll be on. So I can help guys if you know somebody who's struggling or just needs a little bit of some time, send them my way. I'll get them the help they need or put them in connection with somebody who can. So
Great. Yeah, that's wonderful.
nah. So again, Lilia, thank you so much for being on, and we'll stay in touch. And we'll once we get this thing going next month, we'll have a big group on. That's kind of the bombshell of the podcast at the end, guys. Is that we're focusing on a big one. We're going to try to have everybody on, and we'll let it go as long as it needs to go.
Awesome. That is fantastic.
All right, Lilia. Well, thank you so much for being a great guest, and I will see you in about a month.
Yeah, see you.
All right, take care. Bye, everybody.